and welcome everyone. Today we're delving into a process that happens every time we speak, often without us even realizing it. Phonological borrowing. It is the linguistic equivalent of an immigration process for words. When a foreign word enter a new language, it doesn't just get a passport. It often has to change its clothes to fit in. Dawa, could you walk us through the custom and immigration of this process?
Gladly, think of a language not just a toolkit but as a highly sophisticated sound filter. Every language has a unique set of rules and phonology that dictates which sounds are allowed and how they can be combined. When a word from another language tries to pass through this filter, any sound or sound sequence that violates these rules gets caught and is transformed. This isn't conscious decisions by speakers. It's an automatic subconscious process of making the unfamiliar familiar. The goal is minimize effort and maximize intelligibility for native speakers.
I love that filter analogy. And this filter is shaped by centuries of history and culture. It's not just about physical ease of pronunciation, but also about identity. A community substantially asks, does this new work sounds like it could be one of ours? if it's if it doesn't, it gets adjusted until it does. This process is a testament to the license and assimilative power of language.
So, what are the most common adjustments this filter makes? Let's get into the specifics.
We can break it down into three main strategies. First, sound substitution. This is the most straightforward. If sound doesn't exist, you replace it with the closest available one. When mentioned, the English in theory became T in theory. Another great example is the Japanese adaptation of English words. Japanese doesn't have a sound alone L sound, so it uses its R sound. So lights become right and ball become baru. Second, epenthesis or vowel insertion. This happens when a language dislikes certain consonants clusters. English words might be challenging for speakers of languages that prefer a consonant vowel pattern, like Spanish leading to each word. Similarly, English speakers themselves added a vowel to the French print temps, turning it into spring over centuries. And then third, syllable structure simplification. Sometimes the entire syllable structure is simplified. A word like the Arabic kindle meaning lantern enters Spanish as chandil, the unusual for Spanish. T sound and the vowel length were simplified to fit its phonetic patterns.
And these chants aren't random. They follow predictable patterns rooted in the borrowing language history. For instance, in Indonesian, the tendency to adopt the English TY ending as an university into tas, universitas shows influence from Dutch and ultimately Latin, which act as a historical virtue. It's like linguistic family tree, visible in modern vocabulary.
Those are fascinating examples, but is this process always seamless? Are there words that resist this naturalization?
An excellent question. There's a spectrum of assimilation. Some words become so fully naturalized that people forget their borrowings like tea from Chinese, tea in the Minnan dialects, or orange from Persian narang. Others remain in kind of linguistic limbo. For example, The French word genre is used in English, but many English speakers still struggle with the French pronunciation. They might pronounce it as, which is partial adoption, or avoid saying it altogether. The level of resistance often depends on how exotic the sound is the borrowing language.
And this recent tense can be social to using a word with its original pronunciation, can be a marker of education, sophistication, or pret- pretension. Think of someone ordering croissant with a perfect French R versus someone asking for a croissant. That choice of pronunciation can cover con, convey convey social meaning. Furthermore, in the age of the internet and global media, we're exposed to original pronunciations more than ever, which might slow down the naturalization process for new words.
That leads perfectly to my next question. In our hyper-connected world, with English dominating global media, is phonological borrowing still a one-way street? And is it a force for good, or does it lead to the erosion of smaller languages?
It's definitely not a one-way street, though the flow is uneven. English is a massive exporter of words today, but it's also a colossal importer. It's a language built on layers of borrowing from French, Latin, and Greek. As for being a force for good, from a purely linguistic standpoint, it's natural. It's a natural and inevitable process. Languages that don't borrow and adapt can risk becoming stagnant. Borrowing is a sign of a living, breathing language.
I have to slightly disagree on the natural dawa. Well, the mechanism is natural. The context often isn't the massive influx of English terms into other language, especially for the technology and business, can sometimes overwhelm local terms and by extension, local ways of thinking. This linguistic loan can harm with cultural interest. However, the very act of phonologically adapting these words, turning upload into unggah in Indonesian or download into undu, is powerful act of cultural resistance. In it's the language asserting its own identity and making the foreign concept its own.
So we have a mini debate. That was is as a natural, mechanical process, while Hurdia sees deeper cultural implication.
I don't deny the cultural implication, but I believe the fundamental engine is a cognitive. It is a cognitive mechanical one. The culture provides the context, but the mouth and brain provide the rules.
And I will argue that the rules in the brain follows are themselves shaped by culture and history. The reason Indonesian uses X for the English C in action, aksi is due to aksi is due to historical contact with Dutch. It's all interconnected.
This has been a fantastic discussion. To bring it all together, could we summarize why understanding phonological borrowing is so important?
From a theoretical standpoint, it's crucial because it shows us the inner workings of the human brain's language faculty. It reveals the unconscious rules faculty. It reveals the unconscious rules that govern how we speak. It's a live demonstration of phonology in action.
And from cultural standpoint, it's a historical record. The borrowed words in a language are like layers of archaeology, sediment by studying them. We can trace routes of trade, migration, contracts, and cultural influence. The story of sugar from Sanskrit or sakara to Arabic sukar to Spanish azúcar to English sugar tells a story a global movement long before the word globalization existed.
So, phonological borrowing is far more than just mispronouncing foreign words. It's a fundamental, dynamic, and insightful process that sits at the crossroad of human cognition, culture, and history. Thank you, Dawa and Huldia, for this incredibly enlightening conversation. I think that's all from us. Assalamualaikum
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.